And many thanks to the Rosario Football Club for improving the level of play on the political pitch there. So, Reg Empey, you've seen the play at close quarters. Is Sinn Féin losing?
Well, first of all, may I say the best part of the match was that it was played at the Oval. I sort of think that was a very good choice. The fact is that the Assembly and Executive is not performing as well as it should be. People out there are hurting with energy costs, with huge problems facing families, food, and we're facing the winter. Now, I think most people would want the Assembly doing everything we can to help people, because that's the point of having a local administration. And I think the disputes that we've been having seem irrelevant to the ordinary member of the public.
But those seem to be reduced in terms of scores, you know, who's landed one, whether it's the Irish Language Act or anything else. Like Sinn Féin does seem to be losing at the moment.
Well, I think that's a short-sighted thing. I think that we're all losing. I think the Executive is not performing properly. Peter Robinson's only had a few weeks to look at it, so I think we've got to give him some time. But, I mean, he would say himself, there's no strategic overview. It's not functioning properly. There's no proper discussion between the four parties. And I said, when Peter Robinson was appointed, I got up and I said in the Assembly that at no time since the 8th of May of last year have the leaders of the four parties that make up the Executive met. And they still haven't met. So, I mean, this is the position that we're in, and we have this now standoff at the centre. I've made some suggestions to Peter Robinson as how I think we can improve the way the Executive works, get some of the business out of the way that's been backed up at the present moment, and I hope he'd be considering that. Okay. But we can't go on the way we are. OK, well, perhaps, John O'Dowd, a good start for resolving some of these issues would be to have the Executive meet. It hasn't done so since the middle of June. Are you employing your withholding the ball tactics there?
No, we're not. What we're trying to do is ensure that the Executive meets around an agreed agenda. A number of the parties have issues which need to be dealt with. Post-primary transfer, for instance, needs to be dealt with. There's other broader issues that need to be dealt with in relation to policing and justice. And what we're attempting to achieve from the middle of June, it has to be said from the start of June, is to ensure that there's an agreed agenda on the way forward. Unfortunately, that is not the case yet. But what we are doing presently is still seeking engagements with the DUP in particular to resolve all the outstanding issues. So we do have a stable and functioning Executive going into the future. So you're exercising, if you like, a mini veto over the Executive? No, what we're exercising is common sense. This Executive was established on an agreement, on the St Andrews Agreement and on the Good Friday Agreement. There are still outstanding matters in relation to that in terms of policing and justice. We are seeking firm commitments from the other parties within that, in particular from the DUP and the British and Irish governments, to ensure that the agreements that were made are lived up to and we can progress in a partnership government, because that's what it is. And it has to be worth saying, Peter Robinson does not run the Executive. Well, he's in a joint office with Martin McGuinness and Sinn Féin. And you're
all making that point by not letting the Executive sit?
No, it's not a case of us not letting the Executive sit. There needs to be an agreed agenda for the next Executive meeting. We are in the process, and the other parties can speak for themselves, we are in the process of ensuring that we have an agreed agenda.
How soon do you expect that to happen?
It could happen in the morning if parties are serious about it.
Well, Simon Hamilton, isn't it the case that in order to keep this match going, you're going to have to concede something to Sinn Féin? It can't be win-win for the DUP all the time.
I think that the analysis that you've said and the film has showed of the DUP, unionism as a whole in the fore and moving forward, and republicanism on the defensive for the first time in many people's memory, is something that would be shared by a broad swathe of people out there. And certainly we make no apology for advancing a unionist agenda at the heart of the Executive, and I think that.
But obviously you can't advance much at all at the moment if there's no Executive meeting at all.
I don't entirely share this analysis that there's some sort of paralysis or crisis out there. The Executive, and the creation of it in itself and its functioning a year after that creation, the agreement of over 200 issues at Executive level, many with very, very few dissent at all within the Executive, and the delivery of some very real and tangible things like free travel for over 60s and responsive reaction to, say, the floods last year, I think is a sign that things are happening and things are moving. It's not a perfect system, far from it. That's something that we've always.
But the fact that it hasn't met since the middle of June is surely a sign that things are stalled.
Certainly there are issues up for discussion, and we're absolutely ready to discuss those issues, and there are discussions ongoing, and it's unfortunate that with the progress being made on so many fronts, that Sinn Féin, and it has to be said, not the Deputy First Minister, but rather the Sinn Féin President, Gerry Adams, is actually threatening like a spoiled child almost to lift the ball up and walk away.
OK, but Reg Empey, how soon before what we're seeing at the moment, whether it's a political gamesmanship, becomes a genuine major crisis?
If we don't get a lot of papers cleared by the end of the month, and I think there's about 38 backed up at the present moment, we will have problems, because that will start to impact on the administration. It'll start to impact on the preparation of legislation. But look, I think John O'Dowd set out there what the real issue is. Sinn Féin's classic tactic is to get a whole lot of issues together to do a package deal, as they call it. Now, let me make it clear, my party's not involved in any discussion about the devolution of policing and justice. We haven't been. We don't know what was agreed at St Andrews. We don't know whether Tony Blair gave Sinn Féin a letter behind the scenes that nobody knows about. We don't know any of those things. And I have to ask you this question. Do you think, do your viewers think, that in view of the performance to date, having watched that match, that we are ready and mature enough to take on policing and justice if we can't even handle some of the bread and butter issues? And I think that what we need to do is prove to the people that we can deliver on the bread and butter issues. And I think there are things that we can do, things that we have done some things, but I think we can do better. Well, but to take on the most sensitive of issues without any clear indication that we have matured sufficiently to deal with them, I think is a very high-risk strategy.
OK, well, John O'Dowd, on the policing and justice issue, the DUP compromise seems to be to give the position to the Alliance Party. You've rejected that in the past. Are you willing to discuss that concept now?
Well, what we're willing to do is sit down with the DUP and enter serious discussions with them about it. We haven't had those serious discussions to date. And I think that is what's missing out of this. We have had discussions, we have had meetings, but to see until you get down to hard-nosed negotiations, then it's all just optics. That's all we're doing. And I do believe that the local political parties are mature enough and are more than capable of delivering on policing and justice issues, as they have shown that they're able to deliver on many, many difficult issues.
And do you accept Reg Empey's analysis that this could become a major crisis if you don't get the executive meeting shortly? Well,
if the executive doesn't meet in the short term or long term, then obviously you have difficulties. But I think our focus at this moment in time has to be about resolving those difficulties, and I think that's what shows the maturity of politicians, their ability to resolve difficulties rather than walking away from them.
OK.